Hello there everybody, it's Xeno Enthusiast again, and I got a new mic, so that's great. My videos are gonna sound 100 times better now. Anyways, I'm kinda going on a spree with these what ifs, considering I started typing this one out as soon as the Saber what if was posted, but oh well. This what if is called, what if Izuku Midoriya had the powers of Error404 Sans? So like the other what ifs I start, I need to give some background information on the subject at hand. So for those who do not know, Error404 Sans is a variation of the original Sans from the game Undertale. But Error404 Sans is from an alternate universe, or AU, called Alpha Tale. Error404 started out with a relatively normal life, lived with his mom, the Astral Mother, and his brother Alpha Sans. They would go throughout the AU and help monsters in need. And yes, there were two Sanses and no Papyruses in that AU. Everything was fine until one day, a Sans from another AU appeared. His name was Infected. He went around the whole AU, killing everyone and destroying the AU itself until Error404 and Alpha came to stop him. Halfway through the fight, Alpha Sans was sadly killed. Error404 was filled with rage, and he was about to start an attack, when Infected sadly dealt a fatal blow onto him. But Error404 got an idea as he lay on the floor dying. He teleported himself and Infected to a place called the Anti-Void. He then started to hack into the Anti-Void, giving him immense power. Terribly sorry that I paused there. Within a fraction of the second he was hacking into the Anti-Void, he went insane. When he was done, he started to break his skull, making it look like he was crying a black ooze. He came out of this moment of insanity when Infected decided to taunt him and his brother. Error404 was filled with even more rage than before, and took code from the Anti-Void and used it like strings to wrap around Infected and delete him from existence. Afterwards, Error404 decided to go throughout the multiverse and destroy any AUs in an attempt to find the right coding to bring his universe. Now, I kinda forgot to mention that Error404 is the god of errors, so, that's gonna be fun. Alright, now that I gave you the information, it's time for the what if. We start like normal, but this time Izuku is 15 years old. It's the day before the end of middle school. Katsuki and his goons bullying Izuku because he's worthless. Izuku crying like the crybaby he is, the works. Sorry. Katsuki and his goons walk off, and Izuku heads home. He heads up the stairs as soon as he gets home, and cries some more. Oh jeez, sorry. His sob session is interrupted by a commotion downstairs. Izuku heads down to see a man in a black coat and wearing a mask, pointing a gun at Inko. Right before his eyes, Inko is shot in the head. Izuku falls to his knees as the man takes notice of him. Oh? A child? Oh well. No witnesses. The gun is pointed at Izuku, but before the man can pull the trigger, the man is ripped apart by dark blue strings. Izuku looks up to see a somewhat short skeleton in a white hoodie staring down at him. The skeleton places one of its bony hands on Izuku's shoulder, and he passes out. The skeleton talks in a glitchy voice.
Good. You'll be a decent wielder of my power.
Izuku wakes up in a hospital. Mitsuki and Katsuki were sitting in the room with him. How are you doing, Izuku? Mitsuki asked. Izuku sat there silently, not knowing how to respond. His mother, the only person who cared about him, was killed right in front of him. Katsuki suddenly gets up and walks over to Izuku and brings him in for a hug. Both Mitsuki and Izuku were surprised by this.
I'm sorry, Izuku.
I'm sorry for all the years I've bullied you. I'm sorry for all the years I've insulted you for not having quirk. Sorry, my voice acting's really, really bad. Sorry. Izuku's eyes lit up for a bit. Thank you. Izuku then laid back down and fell asleep. Because he didn't suffer any major injuries, Izuku was released later on that day. He went to Katsuki's house. Izuku and Katsuki spent the day hanging out together. Katsuki noticed there was something wrong with Izuku. Well, besides the fact that his mother was killed. He looked a little pale, and his eyes seemed dull. But he had the usual smile on his face, so Katsuki just let it slide. The next day at school passed by with nothing really going on to the last hour of class, when the teacher threw up the papers, knowing that everybody was going to go to a hero school. Katsuki, being himself, said he was gonna go to UA because he was the most qualified student there, while yet again calling everybody else a bunch of extras. Then the teacher suddenly said, "Oh, Izuku Midoriya is going for UA too." Everybody starts to laugh at Izuku when Katsuki suddenly got up and yelled, "Shut up!" Katsuki then sat back down, silencing the room. Usually, in a scenario like this, Izuku would either be smiling from ear to ear that Katsuki stood up for him, or with a grimace that people were making fun of him again. But when some of the students in the class looked back at Izuku, he had an unnerving smile, which would creep out the other students. Katsuki looked back at Izuku, and Izuku had a genuine smile on when he looked at Katsuki. Katsuki awkwardly smiled back and turned back around to face the front. The class was then dismissed when Katsuki's goons decided to try and mess with Izuku, but before Katsuki could do anything about it, Izuku grabbed one of them by their collar. "I'm only going to say this once. Take your friends, leave me alone if you know what's good for you." Izuku then pushed the boy down. Everyone was confused, but then Izuku turned around to Katsuki and said, "Hey Kachan, wanna walk home together?" Sure, Izuku." The goons were shocked, but let Izuku and Katsuki leave, because they were a little scared. Just a teensy bit scared. They end up under the bridge when the sludge villain came out of the sewers and leapt at Izuku to take his body, but Katsuki pushed him out of the way, getting caught in the sludge villain's body. "Well, not what I was going for, but good enough." "Let him go," Izuku said calmly. "Oh yeah? What are you gonna do about it?" Izuku then looked into the sludge villain's eyes and gave him a death glare. The sludge villain was paralyzed for a few seconds. "What a killer glare you have there. Too bad it won't do you any good." But before the sludge villain could do anything, they all hear, "I am here." The sludge villain is then blown away with a large shockwave. All Might then captures the villain in a bottle and talks to the boys. Throughout their conversation, Izuku and Katsuki were fanboying the entire time, and All Might was slightly weirded out. After a bit, All Might gets ready to blast off, but Izuku and Katsuki grab onto his legs as he blasts off, making him drop the bottle. As usual, All Might then lands on the roof of a building and lectures them about not jumping onto people like that. They apologized and said they had some questions when suddenly All Might poofs into Small Might. Everything happens like normal, but Katsuki's there this time. Then comes the big question. Can I become a hero even without a quirk? All Might basically tells him no. Izuku looks down and starts to cry. Katsuki gets pissed and yells, "Who the hell do you think you are?" Telling him he can't be a hero. Kachan. Izuku and All Might are surprised by Katsuki's sudden outburst. "You think that because you're all that, you can decide people's future for them?" Izuku here is everything a hero should strive to be. He never gives up even when things seem hopeless. Katsuki tries to continue yelling at All Might, but then Izuku hugs Katsuki and says, "Kachan, that's enough." "Wow, okay," suddenly yelled, "I'm sorry." "It's over." Katsuki calms down and paces around the roof. "Look, I have to get this villain to the police station. If you bang on the door loud enough, somebody is bound to let you in." All Might goes back into his buff form and blasts off the roof. Izuku and Katsuki eventually leave the building, but see smoke in the air. They rush over to the scene and saw that the sludge villain was causing a scene with a hostage in its body. Katsuki looked at Izuku and told him to stay here. Katsuki then rushed onto the scene to save the hostage and take care of the villain. After a bit of struggle, Katsuki was soon captured as another hostage for the villain. First time this happened, Izuku was calm, but this time something was different. Izuku then saw a memory that was not his. It was a memory of a skeleton turning to dust before his eyes. When Izuku snapped out of this trance, he was filled with rage. A rage he had never felt before, but he hid it under a sinister smile. He then calmly walked through the crowd and confronted the villain. So, it's the two brats from earlier. The sludge villain couldn't say anything else before Izuku reached out his hand and pulled Katsuki and the other hostage out of the sludge villain's body from a distance. What? How? Izuku then held out his other hand. His bright eye switched from green to a glowing dark blue. A dark bone creature then appeared above the sludge villain. The bone creature then shot a dark beam down at the sludge villain. All that anyone could hear was loud screams from the villain as it was destroyed. Everyone was shocked by this, but suddenly everybody started cheering for Izuku. He couldn't care less that they were cheering for him, and he walked over to Katsuki and asked if he was okay. Katsuki nodded, and Izuku helped him up. Some of the pros heroes started to commend Izuku for his strength, and a few others tried to berate Katsuki for jumping in recklessly. But as soon as they said something to him, Izuku suddenly appeared beside Katsuki. Do not say anything to him, or you're next. The heroes were paralyzed by the sudden bloodlust Izuku was giving off. Izuku then grabbed Katsuki's hand and walked off, leaving the heroes standing in shock as well as the crowd. Katsuki didn't bother asking because he was slightly scared. Izuku noticed this and said, "Don't worry, Kachan, I would never hurt you," Izuku said in a pure, kinded tone, and Katsuki relaxed. They continued walking home when All Might appeared, saying, "I am here." He poofs into Small Might, spewing blood and the usual. Izuku, not in the mood for All Might's nonsense, asked coldly, "What do you want?" All Might ignored the coldness in Izuku's voice. "Young boys, I admire what you did. Despite the consequences, you jumped into battle. And though it may not have fully worked out," All Might looked at Katsuki, who looked away, "you both still jumped in with bravery. And for that, I thank you. And as my way of thanking you, I want to give you two my quirk, one for all." Alright, everybody. That is where I'm going to leave this what if off. Comment down below if you want Izuku to have one for all. In my opinion, Izuku is already going to be broken as hell and shouldn't get it, but I'm leaving this to you guys. Also, I can see this what if going two different ways. One, a very violent hero, or two, very violent villain. So, you can choose if he wants to be a villain, or if he's going to be a hero. Your choice. Comment down below, and I'll just take as many comments, and I'll just, yeah. Alright, I hope you all have a good day or night. This is Xeno Enthusiast, signing off.